Before I begin this gripping tale, I urge you to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to on the notification button to get notified when we drop new interesting stories. Like and share also, and comment where you are watching from. Now let's dive into Day's story. They called her ugly. The word, sharp and hissed, was a constant companion, a label that clung to her like the humid Lagos air. It followed her as she shuffled through the gleaming, marble-floored halls of Elite Models Africa, a place where beauty was currency and she was, by their standards, bankrupt. To the long-limbed, honey-skinned women who glided through the agency, she was a ghost, a silent, shapeless figure meant to wipe away the smudges they left behind. They never imagined that the very humility they mocked was her greatest strength, or that the most powerful man in the country was watching from the shadows, not with judgment but with awe. This is the story of how a cleaner's quiet grace brought an empire to its feet, and how the world was forced to redefine beauty on her terms. The first sliver of dawn had not yet pierced the sky over the bustling district of Agege, but in the small single-room apartment she shared with her mother, Lydia Mba was already awake. The room was humble but spotless, a sanctuary of order amidst the chaotic symphony of waking Lagos that filtered through the thin walls, the distant crow of a rooster, the early murmur of neighbors, the sputter of a generator coughing to life. By the weak glow of a rechargeable lantern, Lydia carefully pressed her only presentable Ankara dress. The blue fabric faded from countless washes but clean and neatly pressed. Each sweep of the iron was a meditation, a small act of defiance against the day that awaited her. She turned to the narrow bed where her mother, Mama Ibeji, lay sleeping, her breathing a shallow, raspy rhythm that spoke of a body long weakened by chronic illness. Lydia's heart, as it did every morning, clenched with a familiar blend of love and anxiety. She moved quietly, preparing a simple breakfast of akara and pap, the scent of fried bean cakes filling the small room. When her mother stirred, Lydia was there with a warm bowl and a softer smile. "Nah, you should not trouble yourself so much for me," Mama Ibeji whispered, her voice a thin thread of sound. "It is no trouble, Mama," Lydia replied, helping her sit up. "You must eat to regain your strength." She fed her mother with a patience that was as deep as the ocean, wiping her chin gently. This was her true self, the self the world at Elite Models never saw. A daughter, a caretaker, a woman of profound and quiet strength. Her mother's gnarled hand patted her cheek. "You have a good heart, my child. They do not see it." "It does not matter, Mama," Lydia said, though the words tasted like ash on her tongue. It did matter. It hurt every single day. An hour later, she stepped off the crowded Danfo bus, merging into the river of people flowing toward the island's business district. The transformation from the vibrant, struggling streets of Agege to the cold, glittering towers of Victoria Island was always a jarring transition. It was like moving between two different worlds, two different planets. She entered the sleek glass building of Elite Models Africa through the service entrance, the air conditioning a sudden shock against her skin after the oppressive humidity outside. In the small, stark janitorial closet, she changed into her uniform, a drab, shapeless gray smock that was a world away from the exquisite garments that hung in the models' dressing rooms. Her day began as it always did, mopping the vast, echoing reception area. The floor was a mirror-like expanse of white marble, and she moved across it with an efficient, practiced rhythm, her movements creating a temporary island of order and cleanliness. This was when they found her. The click-clack of stiletto heels announced their arrival before they even turned the corner. Kemi, the agency's top model, led the pack. With cheekbones that could cut glass and a figure that seemed to defy physics, she was the undisputed queen of this shallow realm. Her eyes, cold and assessing, landed on Lydia like a predator, spotting easy prey. "Ah, ugly is early today," Kemi's voice was a smooth, venomous drawl, designed to carry and to humiliate. Her coterie of models tittered on cue. "Try not to let your smell ruin the air for our new clients from South Africa. Some of us have to work." Lydia's grip tightened on the mop handle, her knuckles turning white. She did not look up. She focused on a faint scuff mark near the base of the reception desk, scrubbing at it with a quiet intensity. She had learned early on that any response, even a glance, was like blood in the water. It only encouraged the sharks. The insults were a daily ritual, a hazing she had to endure to collect the paycheck that paid for her mother's medication and their rent. They mocked her dark, unrefined skin, so different from their own chemically lightened complexions. They laughed at her broad nose and full lips, features they paid surgeons to imitate, yet derided on her. The irony was a bitter pill she swallowed in silence. She finished the reception area and moved down a hallway towards the breakout rooms where the junior models and interns often gathered. It was there she heard the sound, not the usual arrogant laughter or vacuous gossip, but the raw, ragged sound of someone trying very hard to cry quietly. Curled into a tight ball on a plush leather sofa was Chiamaka, a new intern. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, her face buried in her hands. A stack of portfolios had spilled across the floor around her. Models and agency staff walked past the open door, their glances dismissive, annoyed by the unsightly display of emotion. Crying was bad for business. Lydia paused, her cart of cleaning supplies beside her. She remembered her mother's words, "You have a good heart." She looked at the young girl, saw herself in that raw vulnerability, and knew she could not just walk by. Setting her mop aside, she approached quietly. She righted the fallen portfolios, stacking them neatly on the coffee table. Then she pulled a clean, neatly folded handkerchief from her smock pocket, a simple, practical item that spoke volumes of her preparedness, and a small bottle of water she kept for herself. She knelt, not as a servant, but as an equal. "Here," she said softly, her voice a gentle contrast to the harsh echoes of the hallway. Chiamaka flinched, looking up with red-rimmed, terrified eyes, expecting another reprimand. When she saw it was just the cleaner, some of the tension left her shoulders, replaced by confusion. "Take it," Lydia urged gently, pressing the handkerchief into the girl's hand, "and drink some water. Crying dehydrates you." The girl hiccuped a sob but took the water, sipping it shakily. "She said I was useless," Chiamaka whispered, her voice breaking. "Kemi, she said I would never make it in this industry because I'm a clumsy fool. She told the director to fire me." Lydia listened, her expression one of calm empathy. She didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she spoke a quiet truth. "Don't let their words become your truth," she said, her voice low but firm. "This place, it is made of glass and whispers. It can feel like the whole world, but it is not. Your value is not in the coffee you fetch or the errands you run. It is in the woman you are becoming. This place does not define you. They do not define you." She offered a small, genuine smile, a fleeting glimpse of the warmth she usually kept guarded. Then, without waiting for thanks or acknowledgement, she rose, collected her cleaning cart, and slipped back into the hallway, leaving the intern staring after her, a newfound stillness replacing her tears. Unseen by either of them, a man leaned against the doorjamb of a nearby office, sipping a takeaway cup of coffee. He was dressed smartly, but simply in a well-cut pair of trousers and a casual shirt, looking like he could be a driver or a personal assistant waiting for his principal. He had witnessed the entire exchange. The casual cruelty of the models, Lydia's quiet diligence, and her profound act of kindness towards the crying intern. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, intelligent and keenly observant, followed Lydia with a deep, thoughtful interest. He was not disgusted by the cleaner's humble appearance. He was intrigued by the strength of her character. Later that afternoon, as Lydia was finishing polishing a vast glass table in the common area, Kemi and her group swept through again. Kemi, laughing at something one of her friends said, made a theatrical gesture with her hand, and her half-finished latte sloshed out of its cup, splattering across the gleaming surface Lydia had just cleaned. Kemi didn't even break stride. "Clean that up, ugly," she tossed over her shoulder. "It's what you're good for." The group's laughter faded as they turned the corner. Lydia stood still for a moment, closing her eyes and taking a slow, deep breath. She willed the hot prickle of shame and anger behind her eyes to recede. Then she knelt, pulling a fresh cloth from her bucket. As she wiped the milky, sweet liquid from the glass, she became aware of someone standing nearby. She looked up, expecting another model with another demand. It was the man from earlier, the one who had been watching her. He had not left. His gaze was not on the mess or on her uniform. It was on her face. He didn't look away in disgust or offer a look of patronizing pity. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. His expression was one of simple, undeniable respect. Then he gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, turned and walked away, leaving Lydia on her knees, her heart pounding with a confusion she couldn't name. The man had seen something, and for the first time in a long time, Lydia wondered if perhaps there was something there to see. The latte had dried into a sticky, dull film on the glass. Lydia scrubbed at it with a quiet ferocity, the coarse texture of the cloth a familiar sensation against her skin. The man's nod replayed in her mind, a small, silent earthquake in the flat, barren landscape of her day. It was so alien, so devoid of the usual contempt or dismissal, that it left her feeling unnerved. What had he seen? Had he mistaken her humiliation for humility? She finished the task, her movements automatic, and pushed the cart toward the supply closet. The encounter already burying itself under the weight of the next chore. It was a strange blip, nothing more. In her world, kindness was a currency rarely spent, and she couldn't afford to dwell on it. High above the chaotic, vibrant streets of Lagos, in a penthouse office that seemed to touch the clouds, the man from the agency was very much dwelling on it. The panoramic glass walls offered a god's-eye view of the city, from the sprawling, energetic mainland to the gleaming, moneyed islands. This was the domain of Desmond Uche, a man whose name was synonymous with immense wealth and reclusive genius. He'd built his empire, Uche Group, on a foundation of sharp instincts and a disdain for convention. He stood now, not looking at the view, but at a mood board for his newest and most personal venture, Uche Naturals. The board was filled with images of real people, a woman with a deeply lined face smiling with genuine joy, a farmer's hands caked in rich soil, a child with impossibly bright eyes and unbridled laughter. There were no models, not in the traditional sense. His head of marketing, a sharply dressed man named Tunde, was on the large video screen looking nervous. "Sir, the focus groups are confused. They expect a celebrity, an influencer, someone like Kemi from Elite Models. They understand that." Desmond's voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of steel. "Tunde, I am not interested in what they expect. I am tired of selling lies. Perfection is a boring, expensive myth. Our new campaign will not be about airbrush skin and empty smiles. It will be about authenticity. It will be about the strength, resilience, and real beauty that fuels this nation. We are not selling cream. We are selling a story, a truth." He paused, his mind's eye conjuring the image of a woman in a drab gray smock, offering comfort with a clean handkerchief. "I saw what that truth looks like today. And it wasn't on any billboard." Back at Elite Models, the air was thick with a different kind of perfume, the scent of impending opportunity. A formal cream-colored invitation had arrived, hand-delivered by a stern-looking assistant. It was embossed with the unmistakable logo of the Uche Group. Desmond Uche himself was coming to the agency to personally announce the chosen face of his multi-billion naira campaign for Uche Naturals. The news sent a seismic shockwave of excitement through the building. The model's dressing room, usually a den of casual gossip, transformed into a war room of strategic preparation. The air hummed with the buzz of hair dryers, the spritz of expensive perfume, and the frantic rustle of garments being pulled from racks. Kemi held court before a large mirror, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "It has to be me," she declared to her reflection, as if speaking it into existence. "Who else could possibly represent a brand of this caliber? It's about time someone recognized true quality." Her eyes flicked toward the hallway where Lydia was silently emptying a trash bin. Some of us are just born for better things, unlike others destined to clean up the mess. The other models chirped in agreement, their laughter like the tinkling of broken glass. The director, a perpetually anxious man named Mr. Adeyemi, scurried about, barking orders at interns and staff. "I want this place spotless, absolutely impeccable. Mr. Uchi must see we are an agency of class, of precision." His eyes landed on Lydia. "You, cleaner. Once you finish the bins, get to the kitchen, prepare the refreshments, and for heaven's sake, stay out of sight once the guests arrive. We don't want to, well, you understand." He waved a dismissive hand, already moving on to fret about the flower arrangements. Lydia merely nodded. The familiar sting of his words, a dull ache in her chest. She was used to being part of the background, the invisible machinery that kept the glittering facade operational. She finished her tasks and retreated to the small, hot kitchen, arranging small puff-puff and meat pies on a silver platter. The sounds of the gathering, the polite chatter, the clinking of glasses, the excited whispers filtered in from the main reception area. It was a world away, a play she was meant to watch from the wings, never the stage. The energy in the main room shifted palpably, a current of awe and anticipation, rippling through the crowd. Desmond Uchi had arrived. He did not enter as the unassuming driver from the day before. This man commanded the space. He was dressed in an exquisitely tailored, deep indigo agbada, the intricate embroidery catching the light. He moved with a quiet, undeniable authority that instantly silenced the room. Mr. Adeyemi practically bowed as he greeted him, ushering him to the front. Lydia, peeking through the service hatch, her hand still clutching a tray of drinks, froze. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him, the man from the hallway, the one who had nodded. But he wasn't a driver. He was Desmond Uch, the billionaire. A wave of dizziness washed over her. Why had he been here? Disguised? Watching? Desmond took the microphone. His voice, amplified, was calm and resonant, filling the room without effort. He spoke of his vision for Uchi Naturals, of his disillusionment with the curated perfection of the fashion world, of his desire to champion something real, something with substance. "We have been sold a lie about beauty," he said, his gaze sweeping over the room, over the perfectly made-up faces of the models who preened under his attention. "We have been taught to value the container over the content. My search was not for the most beautiful face, but for the most beautiful character." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "And I found it. The face of my campaign is not someone who has been served by beauty, but someone who has served despite being told she has none." A wave of excited murmuring swept through the crowd. All the models, Kemi at the forefront, stood a little straighter, their smiles widening, their eyes blazing with the certainty of victory. This was it. This was their moment. Kemi already had a subtle, victorious glance prepared for her rivals. Desmond's eyes moved past them. He scanned the room, not looking at the faces vying for his attention, but looking for something else entirely. His gaze found the service hatch. It found Lydia's terrified, wide-eyed face. "She is in this room," he said, and began to walk. He moved with purpose, past the rows of expectant models. He walked past Kemi, whose triumphant smile began to falter, curdling into confusion. The room held its breath, a collective, bewildered silence descending. What was he doing? Where was he going? Mr. Adeyemi's face was a mask of panic. Mr. Uche? Sir, the models are all here, at the front. Desmond didn't even seem to hear him. He walked straight to the kitchen door and pushed it open. There stood Lydia, frozen in place, a silver tray of forgotten drinks shaking in her hands. She was still in her gray cleaner's smock, a stark, drab contrast to the glittering world just feet away. The entire agency watched, utterly stupefied, as the billionaire extended his hand not for a glass, but for her. His voice, though soft, was picked up by the microphone and echoed through the deathly silent room. Her name is Lydia Mba. For a full 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. The only sound was the faint rattle of the tray in Lydia's trembling hands. Then, the room erupted. It wasn't with applause. It was with a cacophony of disbelief, sharp gasps, muttered exclamations of, "What? This must be a joke. The cleaner?" Kemi's face was a terrifying transformation from smug superiority to pure, unadulterated fury. The color drained from her face, then flooded back in a blotchy, angry red. She looked from Desmond's calm, resolute face to Lydia's petrified one, and her expression twisted into something ugly and vicious. Mr. Adeyemi looked as if he might be sick, sputtering incoherently, his hands fluttering uselessly. Lydia could not move. She could not breathe. The world had narrowed to the kind, determined eyes of the billionaire and the outstretched hand that seemed to offer not just a job, but a validation she had never dared to dream of. The noise of the room was a distant roar, a storm she was separate from. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. Desmond's hand remained steady. He took a small step closer, his voice for her alone now, though the microphone still caught it. "Lydia, the world is waiting to see the beauty I saw. Will you show them?" And as the cameras, initially pointed at the models, now swiveled frantically toward her, their flashes exploding in her face, capturing the most unimaginable moment in Nigerian fashion history, Lydia Mba, the woman they called ugly, felt the first terrifying tremor of a revolution. The flashbulbs were a physical assault, a strobing, blinding hell that stole the air from Lydia's lungs. The roar of the crowd, a mix of shock, outrage, and bewildered curiosity, was a wave threatening to drown her. She stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, a statue of terror in a gray smock, her hand still clutching the cold silver tray. Desmond Uche's outstretched hand was the only still point in the whirling chaos. It wasn't demanding, it was an anchor. Slowly, as if moving through deep water, she let the tray clatter onto a counter. Her fingers, trembling violently, reached out and touched his. His grip was firm, warm, and impossibly steady. He didn't pull her. He simply stood his ground, a fortress against the storm of disbelief, his presence creating a small circle of calm around them. With his other hand, he gently took the microphone from a stupefied Mr. Adeyemi. "Thank you all for your enthusiasm," he said, his voice cutting through the noise with effortless authority. The room quieted, compelled by his tone. "The campaign shoot begins tomorrow. Lydia, my team will escort you home. We have much to discuss." He didn't wait for a response from the agency, from the gawking models, from anyone. With a protective hand lightly on her back, he guided her, shell-shocked and silent, through the parted crowd, past the livid, purple-faced Kemi, and out of the building into the waiting, opulent silence of his armored Range Rover. The ride was a blur. Lydia stared out the tinted window, watching the familiar streets of Lagos stream past, but she didn't see them. The images of the past 10 minutes played on a frantic loop in her mind. Kemi's fury, the director's horror, the blinding lights. She flinched when Desmond's phone buzzed. "Yes, Tunda," he said into the device, his voice calm. "I am aware it is unorthodox. No, the focus groups are irrelevant. We are not following. We are leading." He listened for a moment, his eyes on Lydia's profile. "Her story is the campaign. Prepare the studio. And Tundi, The mandate is enhance, do not mask. Her story is her beauty. Understood? He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. The car glided to a stop outside her apartment in Agege. "Get some rest, Lydia," he said, his voice softer now. "Tomorrow you change the game." The following morning, a sleek car collected her. The studio was a temple of light and white surfaces, a world away from the gritty reality of her life. A team of stylists and makeup artists awaited her, their expressions a mixture of professional curiosity and thinly veiled skepticism. They expected a project, a lump of clay to be molded into something acceptable. They led her to a chair. A stylist reached for a jar of heavy foundation. Desmond, who had been observing quietly from the corner, shook his head. No. The single word halted all movement. He walked over to the mood board he'd shown Tunde, the images of real people, real lives, real joy. "Look at these faces," he said to the team, though his words were for Lydia. "They are not hiding, they are shining. We will do the same." The head stylist, a renowned Nigerian designer named Funmi, looked from the mood board to Lydia's terrified face. A slow smile spread across her features. "I see," she said, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "We are not covering up. We are uncovering." She dismissed the Western haute couture racks and sent an assistant for something else. What returned was not a dress, but a masterpiece. It was a modern, elegant gown crafted from the most exquisite deep blue Ankara cloth. Its pattern a contemporary twist on a traditional design. It wasn't meant to disguise her. It was meant to celebrate her heritage, her origin. Funmi styled Lydia's hair into a stunning, intricate crown of braids that celebrated its natural texture, adorned with simple gold cuffs. The makeup artist, finally understanding, used only a touch of gloss on her lips and a sheer balm to make her skin glow with health, not product. They enhanced her broad nose, her full lips, her dark, observant eyes. All the features she had been taught to hate were now being treated as assets, as art. When they finally led her to the mirror, Lydia didn't recognize the woman staring back. It wasn't a stranger, though. It was a version of herself she had never been allowed to meet. She saw her mother's strength in the set of her jaw, her own resilience in the clarity of her eyes, the rich history of her people in the fabric that hugged her curves. She wasn't beautiful despite her features. She was beautiful because of them. A single perfect tear traced a path down her cheek, and the photographer, sensing the moment, began to shoot. The transformation was complete. Under the lights, guided by Desmond's quiet confidence, Lydia forgot the camera. She remembered the woman who worked 3 jobs to care for her mother. She remembered the girl who offered a handkerchief to a stranger. She remembered a lifetime of quiet endurance. She didn't pose, she simply was. And the camera captured it all: her strength, her vulnerability, her profound, authentic beauty. The results were not just photographs, they were revelations. A week later, the campaign launched. The Ucha standard exploded across social media, billboards, and television screens. The public, initially startled, was captivated. They saw themselves in Lydia's story, which had quickly leaked out. The cleaner, the mocked, the kind-hearted woman chosen not for her face, but for her heart. She became an instant icon, a symbol of a new Nigeria that valued substance over surface. The phone at Elite Models rang off the hook, not for Kemi, but for inquiries about the mystery girl, the authentic face. The final step in Lydia's journey was a meeting back at the agency to formalize her new contract. She walked in, not in a gray smock, but in a sophisticated modern take on a traditional wrapper and blouse. Her head was held high, not in arrogance, but in a hard-won peace. The agency was silent as a tomb. Staff who had once ignored her now stared, their mouths agape. Mr. Adeyemi tripped over himself to offer her coffee, and then there was Kemi. She stood by the window, her arms crossed, her beautiful face a mask of bitter humiliation. She watched Lydia's every move, expecting gloating, expecting the revenge she herself would have exacted. She waited for the smirk, the cutting remark, the victory lap. Lydia finished her meeting and prepared to leave. She could feel Kemi's hostile gaze burning into her back. She stopped. The entire agency held its breath, waiting for the confrontation. Lydia turned and walked toward Kemi, not with aggression, but with a calm, almost pitying grace. The two women stood facing each other, a living before and after picture. The air crackled with unspoken words. Kemi's eyes were narrowed, defensive, already braced for an insult. Lydia's voice, when it came, was quiet, clear, and carried through the silent room. "Kemi," she said. The name wasn't spat, it was stated, a simple fact. "They called me ugly because of my face." She paused, letting the words hang. "They will call you ugly because of your heart. And a heart," she added, her gaze unwavering, "is so much harder to fix. I hope you find your true value one day, beyond this mirror." She didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away, leaving Kemi standing there, not with the satisfaction of a defeated rival, but with the chilling, sobering truth of the words. Lydia's victory wasn't over Kemi. It was over the cruel, shallow world they had both been trapped in. She had simply found the door and walked out. The money from the campaign was life-changing. The first thing Lydia did was move her mother to a specialist hospital, then to a clean, airy apartment with round-the-clock care. But the true culmination of her journey was the foundation she established, the authentic you. It was a sanctuary for young girls from the streets of Agege, Makoko, and other forgotten corners of Lagos. She taught them that their dreams were valid, that their natural features were beautiful, that their kindness was a superpower, and that their value was inherent, not something to be granted by a modeling scout or a billionaire. One evening, she stood on the balcony of her new home, looking out at the vast, teeming, beautiful chaos of Lagos. The city lights twinkled like a field of fallen stars. She was no longer the girl who cried into a cracked mirror. She was a woman who had rebuilt the mirror to reflect the truth. She thought of the mysterious driver, the billionaire's nod, the camera flashes, and the crying intern. It had all led here, to peace, to purpose. A soft breeze brushed her face. She smiled, a serene, full smile that reached her eyes, a smile that held a lifetime of struggle and a future of hope. It was a smile that had earned its place in the sun, not by conforming, but by daring to be unapologetically, authentically itself. The world had called her ugly, but it had been blind. Now, it was finally learning to see.